All right, guys, let's talk about KPIs for your Shopify store. What are the most important metrics for you to track? And really, I'll talk about the hidden metrics that we have over time teased out to really make the progress above and beyond, I think, just tracking the normal KPIs. And of course, the main KPIs that you see here on the analytics page, which I so often start my videos with, are extremely important. And of course, I have even separate videos just looking into your conversion rate funnel, average order value, repeat customer rate, cohort analysis if you have a subscription product, which in this case it's not, but also important in any case. And of course, your revenue and profitability, again, separate video on profitability. But I think there's so much more. And at the same time, there's a gazillion of metrics. So there's this paralysis analysis on the other side of the spectrum of you actually tracking too much or too little. And I'll share just my experience of the metrics that I think are most valuable by pillar, by operational pillar. Go through those, really tell you the metrics that I have initially not tracked, but then started tracking, which really made a difference for me. Hopefully, they'll also make a difference for you. So check it out, and hopefully I'll give you some interesting ideas to work with. All right, guys, which KPIs are the most important for you? Also, let me know your ideas. I'll jump into a nice presentation, which I have. And again, I'll go really by the 6 pillars that we usually like to orient ourselves with when talking about Shopify. And with that, I, of course, mean marketing, logistics, cash flow / finance, content, CRO, conversion rate optimization / just website optimization, and then finally CRM. So let's jump straight in. With marketing, and I'll go into presentation mode, I think there's just 2 really important things. And on the one hand side, again, I'll try to strike this balance between this analysis paralysis, having too many metrics and just focusing on the ones that matter most. And at the same time, definitely giving you some hidden metrics, not so much in marketing, but in other pillars. You'll see I'll probably have some metrics which you're currently not tracking, which maybe you might consider if you find them useful. So I think for marketing, what's really important is your blended ROAS and the diversification of marketing channels. In a separate video, let me move my video a little bit here. In a separate video, I essentially went through this chart, which we compile weekly, right? So this is, again, a random week, 1st of 7th of July, first week of July for a given store. And we essentially track all of our conversion values for all the channels we're running. So Facebook, Google, Klaviyo being email, TikTok, Snapchat, organic, affiliate, influencers, other. And again, from week to week, this might be different, right? So here we weren't tracking influencers because maybe we didn't have influencer campaigns. Organic, actually, we just weren't able to track it back then. Now we are. And we weren't running TikTok ads now. Actually, TikTok is the main channel for this store, right? So all those things change. The point is, for each metric, we track the cost, the conversion value, then the split of revenue that it brings in that given week to the store, the ROAS, and then we essentially compile all this data, and you can see that we have the total. We have 3 different totals because we triangulate. This is actually an attribution issue, which I have a whole separate video about, right? But we have, in this given week, we made a bit over 100K actually on Shopify, right? And actually, I think this is the one. Yeah, I actually had this open here. I had this open in June, but if you go on the first week of July, you can see that, yeah. So here it's actually a bit less because the dates are slightly off. We look at the number that actually Shopify gives us. Then we look at the number that Google Analytics gives us, and then we look at, I mixed this slightly up. The Shopify figure is this one, the 93K. That's what actually Shopify gives us. 101 is what the sum of all the individual marketing channels gives us, which is higher, right? You can actually see that it's 9% higher. And that's an attribution issue, right? In reality, we only made 93K in revenue, right? But if we add up what Facebook, Google, TikTok, etc. tells us we've made, right? In terms of if you actually log into every single channel and see the conversion value and the ROAS that they actually think they've made for you, the number is actually bigger. And this is a common issue because there's overlapping conversions and there's all those things, right? But ultimately what matters is this blended ROAS, right? Here we have a blended ROAS of 3.37, which is definitely profitable. I think the break even for this product is slightly above a 2, like a 2.1 or maybe 2.05 to be exact. So we're well over profitability for this week. That's not always the case. But that's what we can quickly see with this table, right? Is our blended ROAS above break-even profitability? So that's the most important metric. And 2, are we diversified? Here, I actually think we're not that diversified, right? We're running mostly Google ads. More than 50% of our revenue is coming from Google. Then another almost a third is coming from Facebook. Then we have email, and then we have some affiliate sales, right? I'm sure we've had a few organic sales. At that point, it was very small. So we're not that diversified, actually. We maybe only have like 4 or 5, maybe 6 channels. We are missing out a few smaller ones here. But ultimately, and maybe I should do, I will do this in a separate video. I can maybe show before and after, right, of how we were able to take this for a given store and diversify the channels so that we then, for example, here included TikTok. We did Snapchat at some point. That was on and off. We've definitely focused a lot more on organic. We've launched a bunch of influencer campaigns, and we explored a bunch of other channels like Pinterest and, not a gazillion, but definitely a few other channels as well, and therefore diversified our marketing base to be more resilient and less volatile, right? So I would really think about those 2 metrics as just the main marketing metrics. To give you a bit more color, there's this great report. Let me again move my video, which isn't moving. Okay, there we go. Is if you go on under, this is just for Facebook, and again, all the big platforms have a similar reporting functionality where you can go and you can essentially also for a given week, and I also believe this is sometime, June, July. This is actually for an entire month. At the bottom, you can see our daily spend, right, mapped out. So we're spending around, on average, I would say 2K a day on Facebook for this store. And you can see our ROAS, right? And our ROAS is pretty volatile, right? It's literally going up and down from 1.5. Lowest day, this is probably around a 1. And then on the highest day, we're close to a 4, right? So we average out to a 2.15 with 56.2K spent in that month, right? So that's actually only slightly above average, but that's also what I would really track, right? I would actually, because those reports get created automatically for you. If you just go under Facebook under reports, you can select exactly what you want to see, and it shows you the average across the entire ad account, right? Which is actually pretty convenient. And then you can see immediately, okay, what's the volatility of my ROAS, right? Because I think we can all relate to the fact how on some days you're profitable, other days you're not profitable, especially like with this store why I chose this example. This is exactly the case, right? Where we're kind of dependent to overcompensate on the days we're profitable for the days that we were not profitable. And definitely you can see that actually more, not half, but I would say maybe 40%, 30 to 40% of the days, especially here, we are below this 2 ROAS line. And I think this 2 ROAS line, like I said, is a good benchmark in terms of us, our break-even ROAS, right? So we have to be above that to be profitable, and below that we're not. And still, and you can see that, here we were scaling even though we weren't really profitable. So you can then go back and figure out what was going on. I think this is also super useful for you to map out over time your ROAS and your spend. And of course, ROAS, those 2 numbers multiply with each other. ROAS and spend is actually the revenue you make from that channel. Again, combining it to the first table in terms of attribution, and you'll essentially have a very good picture in terms of what's going on with your marketing. All right. Let's move on to CRM, customer service. I think customer service, there's only 4 plus 1. The last one kind of being not really a KPI in terms of automation. I have a whole separate video on automating your CRM and actually automating your entire store, so check it out. But I think for CRM, I think this is where people track either way too much or way too little. I actually think that there's only 4 metrics that you need to track for CRM, and you're going to have this Pareto principle where you're definitely getting 80-90% of the benefit by just tracking those 4 things. That's first response time and first resolution time. I think they are pretty self-explanatory, right? We use Gorgeous. They actually have a thing that they put on their website where they essentially give you like the 5 levels of performance. I actually would take this with a grain of salt. This really depends on what revenue scale you've already hit, and just also how many agents you have, and also what the product is, and so on and so forth, right? But generally, I think if you have a first response time and first resolution time that it's below, I would say 6, 7, 8 hours, you're in relatively good shape. Those metrics do get skewed by the way Gorgeous calculates them, and I'm sure there's other issues with that. For example, if a ticket is open on the weekend and your CRM agents don't work on the weekend, which is maybe fine because your customers don't even expect them to, then those numbers get dragged out, right? Even though when the working day on Monday opens, they do answer actually pretty quickly, right? Anyway, those are the 2 I think most important metrics. Obviously, you want to respond quickly to your customers, and you want to resolve the problems also very quickly. And again, many automation tools to help you do that extremely fast. Cost per ticket, again, goes without saying. We track every single agent that we have for a store, how much it costs them per ticket, right? And again, a ticket can be an email, It can be a chat, it can be an SMS, it can be a phone call, it can be answering a comment on Instagram or Facebook. It can be so many other things that I discussed in CRM. But all of that together, right? Ultimately, they're spending time on every single ticket that you want them to spend time on and that you think is valuable for your business. So you just need to track your cost per ticket. You want to make sure that that's obviously improving over time, just because they're becoming more efficient with the macros they use, with the automation rules, again, that you have set up in the background to help them out. And also because they just get to know your store much better and just hopefully become more efficient themselves. But at the same time, you just also want to make sure that in absolute terms, I mean, we definitely don't want to be above $1 per ticket, and actually much, much lower, especially if we're scaling higher. Like in some of the previous videos I showed you, especially in Q4 when we're hitting 3, 4, 500K a month for a given store, right? The economies of scale need to kick in, and they do. And that's also where you can just track them, make sure that they actually do kick in, and not that if you double the revenue of your store, let's say from 200K to 400K a month, your cost per ticket shouldn't double. It should actually do the opposite. It should actually fall because of the economies of scale, and you should track it. Finally, customer satisfaction. I need to move my video here all the time. So this is also pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to spend much time on it. Every time a ticket is closed, we send out a survey to the customer and ask them to rate one of our agents, right? And then again, they just give feedback in terms of how well that ticket was replied to. Again, keep in mind that this is also very skewed in terms of how pissed off the customer is based on how bad something went wrong with your store. It might really be that, for example, again, it might be your fault. It might not be your fault in the sense that you have a package that actually got lost, because it might actually be DHL's or UPS's fault or not. It might actually be your fault. The point is, when those mistakes happen, you have some pissed customers who, regardless of how well you solve the customer ticket, will give you a bad response. But again, with a big enough sample size, you can still track that over time and compare apples with apples, which you definitely should. And that way you can essentially track the satisfaction and also the quality of your agents. So then there's finally the automation percentage. You want to automate CRM as much as possible. Actually, you want to automate every pillar as much as possible. I have like a bunch of videos where I talk about automating just CRM, automating the entire store. You want to really get to a point where 90+% of all of the tickets you get across all the different channels. Again, Facebook, email, chat, SMS, comments, not comments, right? Anything, in any possible way that customers can interact with your store and ask you questions. You want more than 90% of those tickets automated 100%, and actually get that, I would say, to like 97, 98%, which is totally possible. And then just for the few tickets remaining that are very exotic, that are actually customers asking, very specific questions to their needs, there you might actually need an agent who even there uses a macro to help them answer those, essentially those issues in a more customizable way. So that's for CRM. And exactly, you track your time, your cost, your quality of tickets, and then you automate everything away. You'll be in good shape for CRM. All right, logistics. So with logistics, obviously, and I think this is something that people miss, and they don't understand how important it is to provide fast shipping speed in a world where obviously Amazon drives up the expectations of, same day, 2-day shipping, which you can do as a Shopify store. And of course, if you're drop shipping, this will hurt you a lot. And again, it's something that you tend to just try and forget and avoid, of like, okay, whatever, it'll just take 2 weeks for the product to be shipped out. But I'm telling you, this will hurt also just you financially in terms of revenue and profitability. And again, repeat customers coming back and making bigger purchases, which if you do have a fast average fulfillment time, shipping time, and delivery time, then this will compound over time to a loyal customer base, which will also come back and trust your store. What exactly, I do want to spend a little bit of time on explaining what this means, because, and my video doesn't really move. Okay. What is actually fulfillment time and shipment time? Because I think some people are a bit confused by this. The fulfillment time, the way we define it, right, is really from the moment the order is created to the moment the order is shipped out. And it's not the moment that the tracking number is created, right? So that's actually the only distinction I wanted to make, right? Because some people think that, once the tracking number is there, that's when the order has been shipped out. But usually the order has actually already shipped out and the tracking number only comes later. And in any case, just in terms of optimizing on your logistics, right, I think those are the fulfillment time is really how fast your supplier can get So either your supplier, if you're drop shipping, or your 3PL, your warehouse might also be your warehouse if you have a separate your own warehouse. How fast you get the order really shipped out and out the door. Shipping time is obviously the time for the package, from your door to the customer's door, right? Really the time that UPS or DHL or whoever the shipping provider is to actually ship the item, and the delivery time is the sum of the two, right? So ultimately, you're optimizing on delivery time, but I would really split into fulfillment time and shipment time, because shipment time is really a bit less outside of your control, because it's really DHL and UPS and those big companies that ship it, and there are some optimization techniques you can do there. Separate video on that. At the same time, fulfillment time is really where you're much more in control, because it's really making sure that either the supplier you work with or the warehouse you work with has very good operational system there. For example, the 3PL we use for the store I just showed you, it's called ShipBob, and we use other 3PLs. We also use Amazon. We sometimes use Amazon fulfillment centers to ship out our Shopify orders, even though we don't sell on Amazon. There, the cutoff time is usually 1 p.m. So it means actually all orders that are made even on the same day get shipped out on the same day, and only orders made after 1 p.m. then get shipped out the next morning, which I think is pretty standard, and definitely, you'll get pretty happy customers if you ship out on the same day. So your fulfillment time might literally be just a couple of minutes or hours, and then your shipping time, again, depending on where they are. But we have an option for express shipping, which people do need to pay extra. But if they do pay extra, then we can get the order pretty much across the United States in 1-2 days, and standard shipping is 3 to 5 days. And that's usually what you get with most 3PLs, and that's what I would really aim for. Drop shipping, obviously, you have way less control, although you have some express options there. So I would also consider that. Of course, they usually come with a higher cost. It does, in the long term, pay off. Finally, of course, you want to track your cost per shipment. Again, with drop shipping, interestingly, this cost usually gets hidden. The supplier just gives you one cost, right? And they don't really tell you how much it costs for them to ship it out. They just tell you, okay, you pay us X, and then it includes everything. But actually, they're not necessarily screwing you over there, but you definitely want to make sure you can split those costs, because the shipping cost is actually one where you have more chances to reduce it over time, especially if you have economies of scale. And then especially if you switch from a drop shipping to a 3PL model in terms of logistics, you're definitely able to reduce your shipment cost per order if you reach a certain amount of scale, right? Because then the economies of scale kick in, and you can order in bulk, ship it to your warehouse, and then the warehouse is much more efficient to also shipping out, hundreds of thousands of orders a day in a very effective manner. Then also revenue per shipment, and here this is really revenue for the shipment options you provide on the initiate checkout page. Something that's also overlooked, but obviously if you go to your settings, on your shipping settings, you can ask customers, which you probably do if you have a 3PL, you might also be doing it even if you're drop shipping. You have different options of what they can select in terms of shipping. Usually, it's standard shipping. For example, for us, standard shipping is for free. And we have express shipping, we have expedited shipping, we charge extra amounts for those two options. So I'd obviously track that. You can optimize on the revenue per shipment. You can also check out our app, Trackidex, where we actually have a tool that just does that automatically for you. And then refund rate, of course. And refund rate, again, there's the natural refund rate, which let's say is unforced. And actually, I meant to write forced error here. And then there's the refund rate, which is actually more controllable by you, because, for example, I don't know, you just ship out in in a packaging that doesn't look great, and there's an address from China, whatever it might be. And obviously those things you can avoid also over time to reduce your refund rate, and maybe add a leaflet inside and just make it look more professional will also reduce your refund rate. And of course, if just, again, going back to the speed, last thing I'll say, if your shipping time is too long, then customers might be so pissed that it doesn't matter how good it is when it arrives. 8% of those customers will just want to refund the product because they've been so annoyed. Okay, conversion rate optimization. I have a separate video on that where I asked you to compare 4 different conversion rate funnels from 4 stores in our portfolio. And I chose those just as an example. And I think ultimately CRO does boil down to this, right? You just want to track your add to cart to purchase conversion. Let me go like this. And make sure you optimize on that over time, right? And I think I think this is actually the pillar where you can go above and beyond. Check my A/B testing CRO video where I talk about this at length. But I actually think that a lot of people maybe go too crazy on this pillar, and that's also a mistake I've made a bunch of times, where actually the marginal difference is usually quite small, unless you make really big changes. But it is obviously still something to optimize for, and I think here, just tracking the way this funnel improves, for example, when you're A/B testing from before to after, and then compounding those A/B tests over time, right, making sure that you test the winner of the A/B test with the next winner, like a tournament, where over time those results compound bit by bit, right? But then over months or years, you do actually have a noticeable difference in terms of your conversion rate, which at the end of the day is powerful if you do achieve a sustainable increase. Because for every person that you send to your product page, if the rate is higher, you just make higher revenue, you make higher profit for the same effort. So it is very powerful. In that video, I actually asked you to rank the conversion rates, which are very simple. There was a hook there because I actually compared it also with the average order value, which I would also add as a different metric. Of course, for example, I actually said that this 1.48 conversion rate was better than the 1.88. Why? Because the 1.48% was actually for a store making, actually, I think it was the store that I had open here. Exactly. Again, those were different. This was some random month, but here we make an average order value of $180, which is why I said that a 1.48% conversion rate with a AOV of $180 is better than a conversion rate of 1.88% with an AOV of $70 or $80, which was the case for that store. So of course, if for every conversion you get more than 2x in terms of revenue, then of course the rate doesn't need to be so high, right? Of course, if you're selling something for just $30, $40, which I would say is like a relatively low ticket item, then the rate needs to be very high for you to be profitable. I'm sure you know that, but that's why obviously the AOV goes hand in hand with CRO. But generally, I would just track the funnel, make sure you improve that over time. Okay, and finally with content, I think content really boils down to just CTR times watch hours, right? You want people to click on whatever content you have and watch it as long as possible. This is just a retention graph from YouTube that a lot of people are familiar with, but I think it really boils down to that. It's as simple as that. Of course, to get a higher retention rate and a higher CTR, that's extremely complicated, but the metrics are simple. And of course, I think the CTR is the thumbnail and the scroll stopper, depending on which platform you are, right? Where, of course, you just need the first 3 seconds to really hook you into the content that your customers are watching. And then the retention is obviously just how engaging the rate is. But I think the most important are really, I'm sure you heard this advice over and over again, but it's true. The first 3 seconds are extremely important. And then the retention kind of goes from there, because once people are hooked in, most of them tend to at least watch it till the end, depending how long it is. And I would really focus on just improving those 2 metrics for content, and over time you'll just see that this will also make a difference in terms of then the traffic that you can funnel from the content then to your product page. And then once you've optimized all 6 pillars, you'll have a stronger store. So hopefully this was helpful, right? To go above and beyond just the normal KPIs that you see here, right? And again, some of them overlapped. That you can also, in each pillar, in marketing, in content, in CRO, and CRM, also in terms of cash flow, I think there, actually, I didn't really touch on profitability, but I have a separate video on that. Really the metrics that you can track that are maybe sometimes a bit hidden, that will really improve your business above and beyond, and also will allow you to see if something's going wrong much faster. So hopefully that was useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, before you bounce, consider subscribing to our channel, but only if you've actually enjoyed the video and found at least a few valuable things for your Shopify store. Also, check out our free Shopify app, Trackidex. We have a link in the description below. We're developing new features literally every day, and we're also excited to actually hear your feedback on some of the next features we should develop. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.